Hello, hello. I want to welcome all of you to another hour of some of the stuff that you're hard pressed finding anywhere else except here on the Universal Consciousness Show. My name is Aage, and I'm one of the hosts, and I'm here in the southwest of the United States. And my co host Diana is over in Germany, some 7,000 miles away. So are you there, Diana?
I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Hi, hi. Well,
Hi.
today we're going to have a really interesting show for you. We are going to have a fellow radio talk show host with us, and his name is Chip Reichenthal. I think I pronounced that right. My
Mhm.
German is pretty lousy, but I think I got close anyway. He's been in the radio business for quite a while, and now he's doing a radio show on the same platform that we are. He's also an author, and we will talk about some of the finer things of the afterlife. And I have noticed one thing. We're both talk show hosts, and we don't get much airtime except for maybe squeezing a little bit here and there on another show. And it gets, there are times we want to say things and explain things, but we really can't. And this is your platform, Chip. And what do you think, Diana?
Yes. Hello, Chip. Thank you very much for being with us today. And just to begin the show, could you please tell us what was the point in your life that turned your life onto this path? So how did it all begin? Did you have a near-death experience or what?
Well, it's something kind of like that. And hello to you, Diana. Hello to you, Augie.
Hello.
Great to be here, and I thank you for that. And yes, Reichenthal, so you're right on the money. Actually, the true German pronunciation, which you hit on,
Yeah.
I kind of Americanized it, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Yeah, but well, what started me up on this path was I wouldn't say near-death experience. It was a visitation from a childhood friend of mine at the moment of his death, and it was back in 1979, so a long time ago. He had been. We moved into this neighborhood that I ended up spending the rest of my childhood and early adult life in. When we were I was about 2 years old, and he lived next door to us, and he was the first one in the new neighborhood that I met, and we became fast friends, and we were kind of like twins all the way through our schooling and everything. And, some of the best days of my life, I guess. And he was, I think, my first soulmate, even though I was really too young at the time to know or understand that. But I had gone we live in upstate New York. So I'm coming to you from the great northeast of the U.S.
Yeah.
We
3,000
got
miles away.
southwest, northeast, and Germany.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can't beat that, right? Anyway, I had gone down to college in Miami, Florida, and he stayed up here. And then I came back and he went down. Too bad we could have had some fun if we were both down there together at the same time. But he had started building boats, and I think it was probably the happiest he'd ever been. Isn't that always the way, I guess? But he had gotten into a really bad accident. He was on a motorcycle, middle of the night, and so I guess a drunk driver in a Lincoln Continental ran the red light and hit him head on. He was forced to go into that Lincoln head first. So he was brain dead when they brought him to the hospital. And it was really my first experience with the death of someone that close to me,
Yeah.
And this was a couple of weeks before my 21st birthday. So, yeah, pretty good childhood, I guess, having made it 20 years without losing anybody.
That's a tremendous experience this early in life.
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, he wasn't dead, so he couldn't really grieve. I mean, how do you grieve somebody who's not dead. Right?
Yeah.
But I guess it was the eve of my 21st birthday, eve of the eve, actually. I had grabbed a quart of beer and I went on this swing set in my parents' backyard. You know, I mean, I had been working this whole time and too busy with work to really process any of this. So I took this night to process it, you know, grabbed my quart of beer and I was on that swing set. And I guess about a couple hours went by, you know, and I'm trying to process this, you know, and suddenly there was like this energy on the swing next to me on the swing set, and had never happened to me before, and it was a very odd thing, and I'm like, well, you know, is anybody there? And it was him. It was my buddy, you know, on this swing, and he said he'd come to visit me to wish me a happy birthday, but he also came for my blessing. And I said, okay, what blessing? And he said that he wanted to die. And I'm like, you know, what do you mean you want to die? I mean, I was more weirded by that than, you know, talking to him in the first place. And he said, well, I'm brain dead, so I can't move. It's not a very pleasant thing. And I want to die. And, you know, he'd always been a very independent kid. You know, he ran away from home a bunch of times, you know, at least 10. And not because there was trouble in the home. You know, he just wanted to be in a position where he could make decisions on his own, you know. He had this great independent will. Mm. And even recognizing his will to independence, I still tried to talk him out of it. You know, hang in there, man. You know, come on, they'll fix you. And he's like, no, it's too late for that. They can't fix me. And I said, oh, you know, but try, you know, strong survive and all that. And he said, well, you know, what would you do if it were you? And I like, you know, what do you mean? And he said, well, you know, picture it, you know, you're lying there on this hospital bed. You can't think, you can't speak, you can't move, you can't do anything. You know, what if you're hungry? Well, they've got, you know, these tubes feeding you, you know, this liquid stuff. And he said, you know, what if you want privacy? I mean, you got all these nurses bathing you and stuff. You know, I mean, there's no sense of privacy. I mean, there's absolutely nothing you can do except lie there. But, you know, what would you want to do? And once he put things in my shoes, or put me in his, I should say, you know, suddenly it became really very clear. And I got it. And at that moment, I really became very touched, you know, because, I mean, he could have gone to anybody, you know. He could have gone to the guys building boats with him down in Florida, or his parents, or, you know, doctors or nurses in the hospital with them, or other friends, you know, but he came to me. And for that, I was very touched. And
you were his best friend.
Well, yeah. But it's just, you know, I really considered that of all the people in all the world, you know, I mean, it was that kind of moment. And so, yeah, I told him, you know, well, I do understand, you know, I get it now. And yeah, you know, I mean, there are worse things than death. And, you know, if that's what you want, you certainly have my blessing. I'm really glad that you came for it. Maybe, you know, maybe you can visit me after, you know. And he said he'd try. You know, just like that energy on that swing next to me was gone. And about 10 or 15 minutes later, my mother comes out of the house. It's like 3 a.m. by now. I've known my mother all my life, you know. She's never been up at that hour, let alone, you know, up and out of the house all the way to the swing set in the backyard. Yeah. And she came to tell me that, you know, my buddy's parents had just called. They flew down to Florida and they did the toughest thing of their lives. You know, they unplugged their son. Mm-hmm. And they wanted me to be the first to know. And in that moment, I realized that I had audience with my best friend, my first soulmate in life, really, at the moment of his death. And you know, in the very oddest way, probably the best birthday present I ever
Yeah.
had.
Yeah.
And but that's not what, you know, they told me death was like. Nobody said that, you know. Parents didn't say it. The school didn't say it. My friends didn't say it. Church didn't say it. Neighbors didn't say it. You know, I mean, nobody said that's what death was like. And so I really wanted answers, and
Yeah.
that's kind of what started me off on this path in 1979.
Wow. Boy, oh boy. And when you had that energy in the other swing next to you, did you see it or feel it, or you heard it in your mind, but how was the experience of actually communicating with him?
Well, it wasn't as odd as I thought it would be, you know. Of course, it's just one of those moments, you know. I mean, uh, you know, as guys, we'd hang out, you know, and even in our adulthood, we like to think what we would do if a supermodel hit on us, you know. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd like to think, as a happily married man, that I would say no. You know, I love my wife. There's no one in the world worth losing that over. You
Yeah.
know, and that's probably how I would react. But we don't know until we're in the moment how we're going to react to things. We like to think we could do better than we actually do.
Yeah.
You know, but I did. I mean, the energy itself was kind of. Um, for the most part, I really didn't see it. It was mostly in I guess how you'd say my mind's eye,
Mm-hmm.
but there was shades of this. It was kind of like if you look at heat rising on a hot day, you know, you can kind of see that it's visible but not visible, or that Predator movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger from way back. You know, this Predator thing had this
Oh yeah.
stealth feature
Yeah, the
where he was
cloak.
kind of, yeah, the cloak, where he was kind of visible but invisible at the same time. And again, you know, almost like heat rising on a hot day, but silhouetted in a human form, you know, and really only for a moment. Most of what I heard in my mind's ear, I guess. If you
Yeah.
could say mind's eye, mind's ear. But, you know, I had a lot of conversations in my head in that 2 weeks of trying to process this. You know, what would I say to him? What might he say back? But, you know, when it's in my head like that, it's my inner dialogue speaking for him, you know.
Yeah.
And that's not at all what happened here, because my inner dialogue wouldn't even thought to ask for a blessing that you want to die. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't even gone there, you know, not even the same planet or universe of thought, really. Um, but it also, and I will say, kind of set the tone for a couple of things, especially in the paranormal industry, because look, you know, you meet a lot of people in the paranormal realms when you're a part of it. You know, some of the TV people, some really famous people, some not so famous people, but almost all of them came into the realm from a place of fear. You know, something grabbed them in their sleep or called out their name or tried to push their mother down a flight of stairs or something. And so they're really there to face their fears, you know. But I came into the realm from a loving place,
Mhm.
you know. My best friend at the moment of his death, you know, and a few years later, my wife's dad came to visit. And these were both like very loving types of circumstances, you
Mhm.
know. But I also learned that, you know, put me in their shoes, put yourself in the shoes of spirit if you're communicating with something, you know. And on these paranormal investigations, I mean, if there is something that's reaching out to us, and we get either by listening on these memo recorders or spirit boxes, or, you know, whatever form of communication you're going to use. If you get uh, you know, some an EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, or actually have a real-time communication with something, and thinking that if this is somebody that may have died, let's say in 1820, and you're in 2018 and talking with them now, then I mean, something has to happen for that interdimensional communication to take place. I mean, they have to go out of their way, perhaps, to lower their energy a little bit. You have to go out of your way to raise yours a little bit and meet them in the middle. So having
Yes.
any kind of communication at all with something interdimensional is really the best honor in life.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
that opens up a whole can of worm because if you can hear someone that died in 1822, then you wonder, why are they still here? Didn't
Mhm.
they move on like we think they are supposed to?
Right?
But
Yeah.
what happened there? I know that there's more and more research now that is dealing with this, and there's more and more evidence for an afterlife coming out.
Hmm.
And knowing who we are very important in especially in what we do. And of course, we can never outperform our self-image and our understanding. So what do you think happens at when we drop the body? Well, some people call it dying, and I don't like to use that term much, but
Hmm.
what happens right there? Is there an education process afterwards that maybe somebody don't get? Or is there a transition that normally would happen that maybe they missed out on? Or what do you think?
Well, what do I overthink? I guess is the more appropriate question,
Yeah,
because I've really been doing that. And look, physics is, and especially in the quantum physics world, they're catching up to that sort of thing. I mean, they're still not posing it as real, but I sure am. And I think, the the answer I would give is it really depends on the situation. There were also times for me later on in life, well after that first encounter with my buddy,
yeah,
where I kind of became sensitive as a spirit medium, and uh, I was in this accident, I was in a lot of pain. They have treatments for that,
yeah,
which opens up to talk about opening cans of worm. But I opted to not take the treatment. I wanted to see how I could do on my own,
yeah,
and not very well was the answer, I guess. I was miserable. I wanted to die. I really, really wanted to die. I was just in this place where I was praying for it.
mm,
And that's when I started becoming sensitive to spirit, and I would see and hear the dead. And I didn't think I was made for that. I mean, this was at a time it was a long time ago. John Edward, the medium, was on like Oprah and Dr. Phil and stuff, and pressing the hell out of me. And but I didn't think something like that was for me. I was already doing all the paranormal stuff. But long story short, I mean, I thought I was losing my mind a little bit. Uh, so I'd
yeah.
ask them about it.
You
Hmm?
were gaining a mind.
Yeah, in a manner of speaking, I was. Um, but these spirits that I started seeing were the same kinds of things on TV that, are marked as nasty and evil and out to get you and jam you up, and uh, they just live to push you downstairs or do mean things to you, and I mean these were the spirits, earthbound, of suicides, of murder victims, of murderers. These things that they go out of their way to taunt for the studio audience on a TV show. But they were saying, no, you don't want to die. Trust us on
Yeah,
you don't want it. You don't want to be where we are. Trust me on the. And long story short, they basically gave me hope. They lifted me up. When I was at one of my lowest places. I mean, we were basically on the same level. We were both very sad, very desolate, hopeless. But they gave me hope. And for that reason, I think I'm forever indebted to them. And I try to paint them in a fond light so people can understand that, you know, uh, these ghosts are even earthbound spirits are people too, are
hmm,
people first. Not much has changed. But I mean, to really answer or address your question, a lot of these earthbounds don't know they're dead, you know. But I also had the ability, And this for about a period of 7 or 8 years, where I could do the mediumistic communication, where you could, tell somebody what their lost loved one is thinking or feeling, and that they are there with them, and I asked them all these questions, and even their answers were all different, I had one guy who, and to this day I don't know who it was, but described in detail their death, not the actual death, dying process, but their death process.
Okay.
And this one guy said that he died of cancer. He was buried in hallowed ground, and so he felt very protected there, but very uncomfortable. He said he saw a death kind of similarly to his birth, naked and uncomfortable and afraid. I don't know if he died naked, but that's how he felt, metaphorically speaking. At birth, he said, he was in this nice, warm, comfortable place, and all of a sudden he wasn't in there anymore. He was on this cold table, and there's this guy in a mask slapping him.
Yeah, gee, that's horrible.
All he could really do was cry and pee all over a table. Yeah. And he said death was kind of similar in that, we always tend to think that we're invincible. That our time will never come, and here he had met his time. He had to be at his funeral. He had to witness it. It was like not a choice for him, and he was very upset about that because he didn't want to be around people at this particular time, especially people that still had their lives. But it's kind of in essence Judgment Day from the living. So you get to see what kind of impact he made on the world.
Yeah, and I think also what I found that everybody attends their own funeral.
Yeah. Well, what he said was, it's not a choice. It's something that we have to do so we can see our impact. And I guess there are times to work on, the mistakes you made in life or the things you did well, all the good you did and all the not so good that you did, so you can really kind of get an unbiased, objective picture painted of the mark you made on the world,
Yeah, and when they attend their funeral, it's probably part of the process of closure with this reality that they had created for a while. And when you also said that, they judge themselves afterward for what they did, that is true. Even the Christians say that, God's going to judge you. Well, yeah, but then you look in the Bible and in John's, I think it said, you are God's. So we judge ourselves.
Yeah.
And we have to figure out what did we screw up, what we did really good at, or did we screw something up so bad that we're going to have to come back and do it over again? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree, but we take this picture that we look at. People look at their lives as a picture, and they look at the picture and say, "What's wrong with this picture?" That's what most of us do. What's wrong with this? I don't like my hair in this picture. My clothes look frumpy, my hips, what can I do about my hips? But, here while you're living, especially, that's the thing of having somebody love that either dies or comes very close to death for a moment. And it makes all of us around them kind of look at our lives differently, more urgently, live every minute. Do not go gentle into that good night, live every minute. But I think that, even if we pull the picture back a little further, let's take a murderer, for example, in talking about judgment, because the living people will have a tendency to forever judge this murderer for that one act, because it is an abominable, atrocious act.
Yeah.
But that's not really up for us to judge. There are divine figures to do that. But let's say, this murderer is now dead, and I don't know if they have a proper funeral or not. If they're, on death row or whatever, die in prison.
Imagine
But they had, these people did a lot of good things before that one act, in their lives, did a lot of bad things before their one act. I don't think there are anybody living, and I'm sure people would find a way to disagree with this, but I've never met anybody living that's pure evil or purely good. So I don't think that I would meet anyone in death that way either. I mean, I went to high school with some kids who eventually grew up to kill people, for whatever reason. But when I knew them, these were the type of kids. They were churchgoers. They were good to their neighborhood. They would like mow their next door neighbor's lawn because their next door neighbors weren't moving around too well. They were immobile, I guess, in their old age. So, this is mow their neighbor's next door neighbor's lawn and not ask for money or anything. They were just doing it because they felt it was the right thing to do. I mean, these kids had a lot of character, when I knew them, and eventually they went on to commit murder. So who's to say that one act, stands on everything that you've ever done? You pull the picture back even further, and you think, all right, well, because the human race is an interesting thing. We kind of took ourselves out of the animal chain, So it's not whether we were the top of the line on the food chain or not, because we've kind of distanced ourselves from that food chain proper, once we got homes and indoor lighting and electricity and all this stuff. I mean, we're further and further removed from nature. I mean, we started out, being in the woods just like the rest of the animals.
Yeah, and then there are other ways to look at that. When you say we climbed up the evolutionary ladder a little bit, but boy, oh boy, when it comes to integrity and stuff, how can we compare ourselves to a dog? They love everybody unconditionally.
So I was just talking about that last week, and yet we say every dog has their day.
Yeah, they have
the unattractive people. Look at those dogs over there. I mean, what did dogs ever do to earn that?
I know. Hey, I'll tell you what, we're at the bottom of the hour here, and we got to do about a 3-minute commercial break, and then we will come back, talk with Chip Reichenthal again. And I want to dive into your book a little bit. The book that you have written is sounding very interesting, so I'm sure you got a lot of good things that you want to say about that, and your experiences continues. So hang in with us. We'll be back in about 3 minutes.
All right. Sounds good.
Ben Franklin said, if you do the same thing tomorrow as you did today, you're going to get the same tomorrow as you got today. Changing the world starts with you, and changing you starts with changing the way you think. Late Night in the Midlands can help. Listen to all of our shows at latenightinthemidlands.com, because things really do need to change.
You can listen to the LNM Radio Network 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through the Paranormal Radio app. Available from LNMRadioNetwork.com or TalkStreamLive.com on both Android and Apple. Our call to listen line is open 24/7. Dial 701-719-9704 so you can listen on the go.
The LNM Radio Network and Late Night in the Midlands depends on you, the listener. Without you, there would be no us. So help us continue to bring you the best guests with the best information, and subscribe today. Information on becoming an LNM subscriber can be found at the top of latenightinthemidlands.com. Just click the About Subscriptions tab and become part of the family while helping the truth stay alive. And while you're at it, maybe subscriptions aren't for you. A one-time donation helps as well. Click that donate button on the right side of LateNightInTheMidlands.com and help us help you.
To hide the truth once you know it makes you think that you are better than everyone else. It makes you into the type of person who says, "Ooh, I have a secret," but you're not ready to hear it yet. However, for $39.95, I'll let you in on the secret. You'll lead the people to the promised land for the cheap price of 3 easy payments of 1/3 of their soul apiece.
You are live.
Hello, hello. We're back.
Yes, hello. Hello,
there
we are back. Yes. So, Chip, I just have a question for you. I'm very fond of near-death experiences, researches, and I once read a kind of statistic where I wrote that I read that from the people that pass away, from the one who pass away, 30% are coming back from the other realm, and from this 30%, only 5% tell us about the bad experience. So they experience that what we call here on Earth the hell. And I'm asking myself always, what do you think? What's happened with the other 70%? Are they allowed to stay there by their own choices? That means in the good side, or do you think they were cast away in the bad side? Do you think there is a hell, or is just something that we create while we are living? What do you think about this?
Well, my personal take on it, from talking to dead people, I guess, I don't see that there is what I would personally consider a hell, but I don't know all the answers. I mean, I'll be the first one to admit that. And it's interesting about the near-death experiences and the small percentage of folks that see themselves in hell. What they do with the remainder of their lives is even more interesting, because they kind of see it as some sort of warning. If I don't straighten up my life, then this is where I'm going to end up. So it's kind of a wake-up call. But it's just as perplexing to think that, if people have seen the other side and then come back, and almost always, they will themselves say it wasn't their choice. Something pulled them back, something stronger than them pulled them back. I do think when it's your time, it's your time. I really do. I've known people that really wanted to die a lot sooner than they ultimately did. But experiencing the light, experiencing the tunnel, experiencing this valued time with people that were lost to them, people that they survived ultimately. And this feeling of peace and unconditional love and joy that is stronger than anything that we would ever know in life. I mean, it's just that much stronger. why would they want to come back from that? Most of the time they said, they kind of wanted to stay, but they ended up coming back anyway,
Yes.
which is also perplexing, but not as perplexing as doctors that always try to dumb it down the best they can and say, well, there are certain neurochemicals that are transmitted at this time, and, some of these neurochemicals would create hallucinations in people, visual or auditory hallucinations. It's just like, come on now, shut up.
Yeah.
Yes.
What else can they say when they need to cover it up?
Yeah, right.
But on the other side in this research there is always very important that there are some blind people that they were born blind and they experience a near-death experience. So they go out of their body and they travel in the other realm. And when they come back, they could describe everything that was happening in the surgery room, and they recognize some relatives that they met there in the other realm. So they come back and they will recognize these relatives. So there is something more than. So they cannot say the allopathic medicine. They cannot say it's just an illusion or something, because these people were blind. They were born blind. They never saw before. And in near-death experience, they see everything still. There is something above.
Oh, absolutely. And even, research into blind people will tell you that, there are some things that are very visual to them in their minds. They're just not seeing these reflections of light, that end up pressing on certain parts of the brain and allow, the seeing people to see. My wife is actually, she's legally blind. She has macular degeneration. It's something about her retinas that are, I guess, going out before their time, so to speak. When she has the most difficulty seeing, all of her other senses increase, and there's a lot of research into blind and things a lot more benign than a near-death experience per se, that they do have, they can dream sometimes, they see things in their dreams and such that wouldn't be that different from what a normal seeing person, would interpret.
I read also about a person that was blind for, I think she was an early child that became blind. So they knew a little bit about existence, physical existence, but they said that they loved their dreams because then they could see again.
Oh, sure. Yeah, well, look, I have some difficulties moving around at my age, and in my dreams I can run and jump and, dreams can be beautiful things.
Yeah. But then also, we have incident, you mentioned that it usually, your time is up, then you're going to go. Well, that's true most of the time. But you remember Daniel Brinkley? He died 3 times and he was told, you're not supposed to be here yet. So he came back.
Yeah. I always think of these people that like some sort of major event from nature, a hurricane, a sinkhole, tsunamis, and especially in the situations where one person dies in these major nature occurrences, and it makes you think, what does it take to get to these people to face the fact that it's their time now? And all these major things happen. But the question then goes to suicides, and I like to ask mediums this question because it's not this set standard, it's more opinion or how religious they are that determines, for a suicide, did they cheat God because they took themselves out before their time was up? Or was it their time, regardless of whether by their own hand, by the hand of someone else's, by some illness or accident, And I think the general answer is both. It really depends on the situation, but for the most part, I think it's that they were meant to die at that day, at that time.
Yeah, I think maybe the hour and the minute is a little flexible, but I think when the time is up, then universe is going to start looking for ways to end it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And before you get too deeply into the ghosts here, so to speak, talk a little bit about your book. How did that come about? Well, I have a suspicion, but talk about some of the stuff in there for you.
Yeah, I think I wrote the book, really for the same reason that I have a radio show, which is, I live at home with my wife and daughter, and I never get a word in edgewise, So I have a radio show, so for, 2 hours a week, and I should shamelessly plug that. It's called Kindness Beyond the Veil, Monday nights from 7 to 9 p.m. Right here on this very network. Kindness Beyond the Veil, and we look at the kinder side of afterlife and paranormal and metaphysics and extraterrestrials and everything. I mean, there are benevolent things that occur, in these very, very dark fields, and a lot of them were personal experiences of mine, and that's a good segue into the book. The book is called "Even the Dead Won't Tell You the Truth." Kind of an ominous sounding title.
Yeah. But, where can people get that?
Oh, well, fortunately for people, it's available on Amazon, including in Kindle form. It's always cheaper than the actual hard copy paperback. Mm-hmm. They can get it on barnesandnoble.com and from the publisher at Rowe Publishers, ROWE, at their site at rowepub.com, ROWEPUB.com. Even the Dead Won't Tell You the Truth. And basically, it is a first-person perspective of a spirit medium. And look, there are a lot of mediums who write first-person perspective books. So this one is a little different. It's kind of my personal experiences, really hidden in the guise of a murder mystery novel. The sake of the story, the central character is a spirit medium, and the book begins where he discovers his best friend from high school has just been charged with murder. All right, and now the best friend in high school, back when they were in high school, the best buddy was, captain of the football team. He was, basically the most popular kid in school. But he was also the most dangerous, I guess. He was very big, and people kind of, feared him a little. So it goes to that Machiavellian, better to be feared or loved type of thing. But that was the best buddy in high school. And back in high school, the best buddy had the girlfriend. She was the prettiest girl in school, the prom queen. It's basically kind of a template of your standards story of a super couple.
Oh, yeah, it's always that way.
Yeah, right. But we're fast forwarding about 30, 35 years. Now the best friend is in jail. He's charged with murder. The circumstantial evidence is very damning. It really doesn't look good. And the prom queen from high school, she's the murder victim. She's the one that's been killed. And, here, best buddy, went to college. He met the girl of his dreams in college and married the college girlfriend. And hadn't even seen, the prom queen in years. So what's going on there? So there is that. And the best friend was never into any of that talking to the dead stuff. It was a bit outside of his comfort zone. It didn't affect the friendship at all. It's just something they didn't talk about. But now, desperate and in prison, the best friend asks our medium if the medium can communicate with the murder victim, that prom queen, in order to try to find some sort of alibi evidence to clear the best friend. And so the medium tries, and on his first try of communicating with this prom queen, now the murder victim, it almost seems like she's implicating the best friend. And he's thinking, well, that's not right. Something's wrong about that, She couldn't be lying, right? So part of the book, he goes out on a quest to see if dead people can lie to us and to what extent they can lie, because they're all different, shades of lies. Yeah. I mean, it's clearer now in today's history than ever before, I think, these different kinds of levels of lying. there's the no, you don't look fat in that dress type of lie.
Yeah, the white ones.
Yeah, the white ones. Basically to preserve somebody's integrity or better feelings, But then there are really malicious ones. Like, what would happen if this girl were to, maliciously lie to implicate the best friend when in fact he is innocent, and puts him in jail for the rest of his life? And would there be penalties on the other side for that kind of malice? And is there a moral compass or a moral code that applies to the other side as it does this one? So there's, philosophy in it. There's history. There's first-person perspectives of talking to the dead, and a lot of my experiences, But it's also a page-turning story, a murder mystery.
Well, I know you have a lot of your own experiences in there that you have intertwined with it, and it's probably a good way to get the actual happenings and the truth out there. I remember reading a book years and years ago, and the guy that wrote the book, he says, I couldn't write it as it was true, he says, but he titled it, Nothing in this book is real, but it's just the way it is. So sometimes we have to write it up maybe as a novel in order to get the truth out. And I think that's what you've done.
Yeah, a little bit. And I just, I didn't want to be like everybody else, writing a book about their own personal stories. Because, and look, they're very interesting for the most part, depending on the medium that wrote the book, But I just, I didn't really want to be like everybody else, and I wanted to try something a bit different. It was sneaky,
Yeah.
Got to be sneaky every once in a while, and so that's what I did. Yeah, even the dead won't tell you the truth. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Row Publishing at rowpub.com. And I wrote a sequel to it. Actually, 10 chapters. I haven't gotten past chapter 10 because I wanted to try something a little different that I still have not come to terms with. It's been a couple of years now, but it's much darker than Even the Dead Won't Tell You the Truth. My proposed title is Even the Dead Kill Time. And it kind of takes us from the way the first book ended, that murder mystery story, which I can't do spoilers here, but kind of takes it from that point on. But it's a lot darker, and I'm really, I'm the love and light guy,
Yeah, I know.
So
And, the thing about it is that disembodied spirits or thought forms or entities, whatever you want to call them, they're not always good. We see pictures of people that wake up in the morning and they have claw marks all over them and they are being attacked. And there are stuff happening out there, and maybe it's not, I think we draw some of that stuff to us by the way we think.
Well, and I'm not a law of attraction guy. I'm really, really not. But I've been looking at the law of attraction and how the New Age industry has made an awful lot of money. They kind of tie religion into it also. Yeah. But, the law of attraction is based on universal laws.
Yeah.
And really, if you're looking at paranormal or extraterrestrial or psychic or metaphysical things, and you really want to get to the bottom of it, you have to take yourself away from that three-dimensional world that we're always so focused on.
Yeah.
And in that three-dimensional world, we are living in what they call the arrow of time, where it's just one straight line. What's behind us is behind us, what's ahead of us is coming, and we have no idea, and it's all about the here and now. But in universal laws, it's all about energy.
Yeah.
It's all about balance. And there are laws to these things, which kind of go beyond that three senses world, where time is bendable, it's flexible. It's like Einstein's space-time,
Yeah.
A warp in space, so it means a warp in time. And some of these thought forms or earthbound spirits or whatever you want to classify them. Sometimes they could be where you're talking to living people from 1820 or whatever, but in a time warp, and we have to think about things like that.
Yeah, it gets really complicated when you go behind the curtain like that. And I see now we have 2.5 minutes left.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Yeah, I want you to do two things here, if you could. First of all, the people out there that are seekers like us, we are looking for answers on both sides of the veil.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of advice would you give them to do beyond maybe patience and keep seeking? And what would you tell them to do?
Well, I would say we find in life, in any situation, that which we seek, and a lot of us are walking around trying to confirm what's wrong with us, all the bad stuff that we did. It must be true that I'm a loser. It must be true that I'm argumentative and hard to get along with. It must be true that no. I mean, if you surround yourselves every day, there are moments of joy. Things that bring smiles to us, things that calm us and make us feel worthy. You start living in those moments, and pretty soon you'll find joy is what you see. Joy is what you seek. It's all around you. And I think if we go into these industries fearful, then we will end up with that which we seek, which is fear. But if we go into these industries loving, and love comes really from within and joyous, then these experiences will become loving and joyous. I guess that's the most general way to do it in 2 minutes or less.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty good, because we will always find what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah,
and even if we know where to look, we got to remember that even a blind hog will find an acorn once in a while.
Yeah, that's right. A stopped clock is right twice a day.
That's right.
It's like that's even better odds than my marriage. I'm not right twice a day.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I'm good with that.
Okay. Well,
I have a radio show.
We're getting down to the end here. It's just also I would love for the listeners to go to the website, lnmradionetwork.com, and hit the donate button, because this radio show and this station is donate based. They're relying on your support in order to keep us on the air. If you find anything good in what we're talking about, please help us. We are doing the best we can. Please also you do the best you can, and then we will be here. So now we are down to the end, and thank you very much, Chip. And I enjoy this very much. I love speaking about spiritual things.
It's always a good time when we get together, Aage.
Yes.
So I thank you, and I thank you too, Diana.
Thank you very much for being here.
All right. Thank you, Nam, and we will see you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.